Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have the Orville. This is a 20th Century Fox acquisition from Seth MacFarlane. It came out in 2017. It's got 4 seasons, currently on Disney Plus. There's never really a clear answer as to whether we'll get more seasons. At this point, I think there's no chance of that, but you never know. I was recently at a Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, Star Trek based. Although, because of the writer's strike and the actor's strike, nobody could say Star Trek. But the crew of the Orville were also there, posing for pictures and meeting fans and signing autographs and stuff like that. So they are Star Trek adjacent, mainly because Seth MacFarlane is a humongous Star Trek nerd, having grown up with Next Generation, especially. And I say that with all love because I'm a Star Trek nerd as well. Yes, absolutely, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but that does not mean that you can't love Star Trek. I actually loved Star Wars first, and then I got to check out Star Trek, the original series, on PBS late at night. It was kind of... on Saturday nights, they'd play, at midnight, they'd play 3 uncut episodes in a row. And so I'd be up to almost 3 o'clock in the morning every Saturday night, making my parents mad because I would not be awake for church the next morning. But it was worthy sacrifice. Anyway, this is, actually, only 3 seasons? Wait a second. Okay, I thought there was 4. No, there are only 3 seasons. I am absolutely wrong, and I will admit that. The 2 were created early on 20th Century Fox, and then they sort of did the latest season sort of all together in one shot. Not one shot, but in an unconventional way. You can read about it, but I'm not going to give you all those details. What matters here is that, is this worthwhile watching? Now, it depends on who you are. Star Trek fans are often opinionated, really? Yeah, they're often opinionated. And again, everything has to be almost seen through the bubble of Star Trek. Because, again, this is Seth's homage to everything he loved. The fact that, I think it's because I don't know if they've ever let him near Star Trek or would ever let him near Star Trek. Because of his unconventional humor. You know him from Family Guy, American Dad, just all those things. And he's had the entire cast of the Next Generation crew appear on Family Guy at one point. And also Patrick Stewart is a close friend who has a recurring role as a CIA director on American Dad. He literally plays Seth MacFarlane's boss on American Dad. So, and you get to hear Patrick Stewart say the most non-Picard things ever. And I do prefer, by the way, not that this matters, but I do prefer American Dad to Family Guy, even though I watch both. American Dad is just that much further out there and weird and hilarious. So that's my recommendation for today. Now, do I recommend this? Again, I enjoyed it. I have friends who did not enjoy it. Basically, just because people have certain expectations about certain things that really, it's just in their own head, in their own requirements. They can't, people who make these shows can't take into account everybody's feelings about, the very first scene, we find Captain Ed Mercer walking in on his wife having an affair. One of my friends is not, he's very adamant and hateful about people cheating on people. And so that entire opening scene ruined everything for him. And then it made it worse because, to a certain degree, even though he nitpicked at it when they were reunited a year later, Ed Mercer and his ex, played by Adrienne Palicki, her from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that football movie, I can't remember, American Friday Night Lights, I think. She was in Friday Night Lights. He kind of forgives her sort of tentatively, almost by the end of the first episode. So my friend is a little bit adamant about not forgiving people for the crimes they commit. So yeah, he's very strongly opinionated about that. But again, it creates the tension, and it creates the tension between the two characters It provides humor. It provides a storyline where we don't get a couple right off the bat. Yes, I'm still sick. A couple right off the bat who has no connection to each other and are supposed to work together. There's drama already because there's animosity between them, and can they overcome that to get the job done? Something you're never really going to have right off the bat with Captain Picard, and certainly not with Kirk, because each episode was fairly self-contained for the most part way back when. And Picard just kept going through women left and right, green ones, everyone. They're just everywhere. So yeah, it's there's so much Star Trek influence from the big money shots of the spaceship, the first sight of the Orville when they zoom in on it, the fanfare music that sounds very Trek, sounds very good, Jerry Goldsmith, but it's not Jerry Goldsmith. It feels well, music sounds a little bit more like Voyager than it does Next Generation, but still, it takes the science seriously, it takes the drama and the action seriously, but peppered throughout this is Seth MacFarlane humor, and often the repetitive quality where he keeps coming back to the same bit over and over again, and some people don't find that funny. If you've seen Peter Griffin do like when he hurt his leg, it's that kind of thing. It's thrown in there every once in a while, and there's still also plenty of 20th century references. He has a Kermit the Frog on his desk. Even though you don't see it in the first episode, he has a Kermit the Frog doll, plush animal on his desk because he finds inspiration from him. And it's just, yeah, I mean, sure, Next Generation always had people going back to the 20th century on the holodeck meeting, Mark Twain or no, that was a time travel thing. But, they're being Sherlock Holmes or doing the Old West kind of stuff. Yeah, that's, and again, there is a holodeck. They don't call it a holodeck. It's a holodeck on the Orville. So, yeah, it allows for greater broadening of storytelling that doesn't confine it to the interior of a ship, a single set or a set of 3 different sets, a medical bay, the bridge, and then somebody's quarters or something, or the bay, the docking bay or whatever. Excuse me. So, yeah, it allows for, a variation of storytelling, but also it opens up for Seth's humor. And this waxes and wanes throughout the series. Some people have complained that it is just almost too goofy at times, too silly, and it takes them out of the experience by thinking, oh man, we're kind of watching a new Star Trek show, but then there's a dumb joke, and that's definitely not Star Trek. Or there's people who are just like, wait, I thought this was Seth MacFarlane. I figured there'd be more Family Guy level jokes in this. What is all this nerdy stuff? Why are they taking it so seriously? And there's a certain level of people who will also not like it, because even though shows, Star Trek has been, God, I hate using this word, and hopefully it will go away, and the fact that I'm using it now, excuse me, the fact that I'm using it now, people will be confused in the future, like, what does that even mean? Star Trek has been woke from the start, from the 1960s. So, yeah, it dealt with racism, it dealt with immigration, it dealt with all sorts of the touchy-feely, as some people consider it, the empathy that's involved with being woke, aware of your world and the people around it, not just yourself and your people. It's been aware of that since the beginning. The Nazis were bad guys, even in 1965, 66, 67, and in the 80s and the 90s. And yeah, it's been like that. But the Orville takes it to a whole nother level with today's politics. They cannot rely on, this is one of the liberating things about the Orville, is that they don't have to, because it's its own thing. If this was Star Trek, it would have to bend to the rules of what a Star Trek show is. Yeah, Lower Decks is an animated series, and it's really self-referential, and it's funny, and everything else. It's an animated series, but it's still canon. to a certain degree. But this is, excuse me, no cuts. It has to stay within a certain understanding of the world and stories that have already been told, referencing characters and eras that have already existed. And it can't go too far off the rails. This has no rails, except keeping with a sci-fi theme and dealing with today's issues in a futuristic setting 400 years in the future. And that is what Star Trek was always about, and that's what the Orville's about, and it's not limited to something Trek, which, although I think Seth would love to have his own Star Trek show, this is his Star Trek show without having to bow to Paramount. And he was very happy when Disney bought Fox and could get out from under the umbrella of anything that said Fox, because very often they do not look they often do not look well upon anything that is woke. That is treating people with equality and worth. There is a long-standing, I think it's in the third season, there is, maybe it's part of the second and the third, there is a transgender story. There's some really deep, upsetting storylines that are pretty dark. And you're just like, how can they do jokes and do this dark stuff at the same time? Because one of the characters is from an all-male society, and they have a child who, at one point, he and his husband have a child that realizes they might be female, and that is forbidden to a degree that even would make us go, oh man, that's pretty brutal. But it's definitely meant to reflect our today's politics and social norms that people in different parts of our country and the world itself, not just America, not necessarily the United States, but you get to see how they deal with that issue. And hopefully we'll open a few eyes and give it a little greater understanding of trans rights and among other things. Again, it doesn't get preachy, although some people might consider it pretty preachy, but I think it's some good storytelling. I don't think they get to, they got to kind of wrap up the story in the 45 minutes. Each of these episodes are about 45 minutes long each. They don't get, they do continue from episode to episode. There are some subplots that continue from episode to episode, such as, like it does with Deep Space Nine, which is the first series to have that continuing overall larger story arc, unlike Next Generation and Voyager. Voyager had a couple two-parters and stuff like that, and they had some background story things, but for the most part, Deep Space Nine had the biggest long-standing, overarching, multi-seasonal storylines for a lot of their characters and a lot of the cultures that came into conflict. And of course, when you look at this show, you're going to see a lot of familiar Trek tropes, let's say. There's an android being on the ship, Data. There is a large, bumpy-headed, intimidating guy on the ship. Well, guess what? He's kind of Klingon-looking. There is lots of forehead stuff going on. So yeah, there's another alien woman. She's got the forehead and she's super strong, but she's security. So yeah, you get all this, but also you get Penny Johnson-Gerald, who was also Sisko's wife on Girlfriend, then wife on Deep Space Nine. So not playing the same character, of course, two different universes, but Penny Johnson-Gerald is the doctor on the ship. And yeah, so you get a whole lot of very Trek type things. So if you've watched all the Trek stuff and you love all the Trek stuff, you know what? I say give this a chance if you haven't already. Again, you're going to get controversy, and if you're closed-minded at all, you're going to be upset by a number of different things. So you're going to be upset by a number of things, but hopefully you can watch these episodes with an open mind and still have fun. It's meant to be humorous, but there is stakes at hand. There's drama for each of these characters, and you can still enjoy that too. Just don't expect it to be exactly Star Trek. That is the problem a lot of people want, a lot of people have with this show. They either want it to not be Star Trek or to be so Star Trek you can't tell the difference, and you can't get that. It's its own thing, and there's a weird balance in there somewhere. You gotta just deal with it. So I know I could talk about Star Trek and everything related to it for hours. Maybe that's my next video series, but my friends and I watched every Star Trek ever over a 5-year period. Every show created to that date. We watched everything in 5 years. A 5-year mission. To the day, almost. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, let's pick tomorrow's episode.
128.
128. I hope I'm not blowing out speakers every time I cough. I really can't help it. I've taken my medicine, and it's still not, it's not doing enough. 128. Come on. It's 128, right? I've already forgotten. 128. We got another series. Man, we got 3 series in a row. But this is very Disney from what I understand. This is a Disney Channel thing, I'm pretty sure. The title just tells me that. We're watching Gabby Duran and the Unsittables. Yeah. Gabby Duran and the Unsittables, that's probably going to be one episode. I think I'll get the gist of it. Men my age probably shouldn't be watching too much children's programming that is pointed toward tweens. It's just unseemly, let's just say. All right. Gabby Duran and the Unsittables on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye.